Good morning. I want to talk about today fear, faith and a storm. You know, as a believer sometimes things can be very hard to live. It's hard to live even if you're not a believer, but sometimes if you're in that fight or letting your faith grow or doing something for the Lord, you'll find opposition. And most of the opposition comes from our own thoughts too. So today I want to look at a passage of fear, faith and a storm, and it's about Jesus walking on the water and Peter reacting. Okay, so in Matthew, get the story here in Matthew 14 and starting at verse 22. Just a few wee thoughts I want to bring out here to encourage people out there that if you're going through a hard time or you're doing a bit of work for the Lord, that keep pressing on. Okay, we'll see here the story of this. It's really lovely. So verse 22, Matthew 14. Immediately he made the disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After dismissing the crowd, he went up to the mountaintop and he himself to pray. And when the evening came, he was alone. But the boat had already been over a mile from land. Now it's interesting here about Jesus walking on the water and Peter walking on the water. The boat was a mile from the land, so there was no sort of causeways, hidden rocks or anything. It was way out at the Sea of Galilee, way out in the middle probably. So it was over a mile from the land. Battered by the waves because a wind was against him. Now, as far as I hear, I believe in the Sea of Galilee that a storm can build up very quick. Now, these were experienced men. These were just not your novices out rowing a boat at the weekend. These guys was their fishing, was their life blood, and they went through many a storm, but this must have been a very, very rough storm to move into their category and experience, you know. So the wind was against him and the waves was very big. And it says round about 3 in the morning he came towards him walking on the sea. Now, wouldn't that turn your head if you seen somebody in the middle of an ocean walking on the sea? Now I would say it was still dark here, so they must have got a good view of him and it must have been not that far away from the boat while he was walking. Now, it's an interesting wee thing here. One time a guy told me this is equivalent to Abraham while he put the sacrifices down and the Lord moved in between the sacrifice. The Lord was demonstrating here who he was and what he was doing, that he was God, he could control the elements. And there he was walking on the sea, and it scared the wits out of the guys here. It says, because the wind was against him, verse 25, and round about 3 in the morning, he came towards him walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. So here comes the fear. You know, sometimes we're in situations here and we make a judgment and it can be wrong and fears run into our mind. Should you be sick or ill, or should things been said against you, or are not lacking something in your life, and the first thing comes into our lives is fear usually. But Jesus says fear not. If you know the Lord as your personal Saviour, we're not to fear. Fear gets you nowhere, you know. But look what happened here. It says it's a ghost, they cried out. And immediately Jesus spoke to them. You know, if you're in a tricky corner in life where things you have to be an overcomer, you need to pray. You need to pray at that time. And look what Jesus says here. Immediately, verse 27, immediately Jesus spoke to them, have courage, it is I, don't be afraid. So the Lord was going to teach the disciples something here, especially Peter, about fear, that there's nothing that he cannot overcome. And that's how your faith grows too, by through the testing, through the trials, and you see you come out at the other end. And you say, my goodness, I was able to get through that there. And along comes the next one, which might be more difficult, but that's how you grow in your faith. So your faith will always be tested. So, but his words to the disciples, have courage. It is I, don't be afraid. sometimes we think we bite off more than we can chew and doing the Lord's work, but take courage. If you know you're definitely want to evangelize or follow the Lord in some way and use the gifting that you have for the church, go for it. Go for it. You know, don't back off. So have courage. That's a lot of stuff we needed. Sometimes it's easy said, you know. But anyway, look at verse 20. Here's Peter. I call him Impetuous Pete. He had to say something, you know. The guys is all staring out, and there was Peter, the personality coming through, and it says, Lord, if it is you, answer me. Command me to come to you in the water. You know, there's Peter spoke out there. He certainly was impetuous there. Come was a simple word. Come, he said. And climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came towards Jesus. So he was walking on the water now, and I know, you know, sometimes we're very sore on Peter. We always remember the story how the cock crowed 3 times and he betrayed the Lord. But here was a man here, full of courage. He had courage to go out. He wanted to do it. And you know, so we've got to be careful and criticising Peter a lot. He was very courageous here. And where was the other disciples? They didn't get out of the boat. Only Peter got out of the boat. He made a move. And it says there, but when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid. Now this can happen too. Sometimes God sends us on a mission to do something, and you know, Peter here got his eyes off the Lord just for this sake, because you're doing something, you need to keep your eyes on him all the time. He didn't see the Lord. He drifted from seeing the Lord walking on the water. He looked at the waves. He looked at the circumstances that he's walked into, you know. And sometimes we feel like that too, you know. We start to do something to the Lord and say, oh goodness me, I have bitten off more than I can chew here. Look at these big waves coming. Look at the trouble that I'm in, you know. And it says that he was afraid and he began to sink. And he cried out, Lord, save me. Now I can guarantee I have, and you will if you're a believer, you've called out to the Lord in some circumstances. Lord, get me out of this one, please. And what does the Lord say? Take courage. Take courage. And it says, immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught hold of him. Isn't that wonderful, isn't it? Now I'm sure that up it came, it must have been maybe down to his knees in the water, but up it came, and it says, you of little faith, why do you doubt? Oh goodness me, this is very true too, you know. Sometimes, you know, we doubt in what we're doing. Now, it's amazing too that whenever Jesus in the Mount of Transfiguration, you know, when he was ascended to heaven, it says that the disciples looked up, some doubting. So you can have doubts too, but just don't doubt. Trust the Lord in what you're doing. He will take care of you, and that's the lovely thing. He'll get you through the different circumstances that you're in. And look, it says, you have little faith, why do you doubt? Then they got into the boat and the wind ceased. Wow, that was the test. Jesus was in total control there. And when those in the boat worshipped him and said, truly, you are the Son of God. And he is the Son of God. He is God's Son. And the part of the Trinity. And that's a powerful thing who to belong to Jesus. May the Lord bless you today in that situation that you're in. Don't be looking at the waves. Don't be looking at the wind. Keep your eyes fixed on the Lord. He'll take care of you, and take courage. Bye.